All right, yeah, we're going.
Okay. Hello, my name's Barry Johnson, and welcome to a discussion about Habroxia. I'm joined by three gentlemen here who I'm pleased to have with me. I'll introduce them in turn. First, we'll start with Colin Moriarty, my co owner of Lillymo Games. I first found out about Colin on Podcast Beyond, where he was, at the time, I believe, working on the IGN Guides team. He then went on to work for the PlayStation team as an editor, and then co founded Kinda Funny with Greg Miller and others, where he hosted the PS I Love You PlayStation podcast. Only to next move on to Colin's Last Stand, now Last Stand Media, where he hosts the Sacred Symbols podcast. So it's safe to say he's a PlayStation expert. He's got the Knockback podcast, Constellation. He's the writer of Twin Breaker, Habroxia 2, Super Perils of Baking, and now the writer of Habroxia 1. Good to have you with me, Colin.
Thank you. That's very, very kind introduction that you've given me. I appreciate it. I'm specifically just a hanger on, basically, compared to you guys. So I appreciate it. I'm happy to be here. Very happy for you, Barry, that we can finally get this game on PC. So I'm pleased to be here for a conversation, and I'm so happy to not be hosting a show. So thank you for doing it.
Yeah, thanks for being here with us. I know it was a bit last minute, but I'm glad to
All
have
good.
all of us here together. So next up, we'll introduce Wayne, who is the lead artist on all of the Habroxia games. We'll get into a bit how that came about later, where we had another artist at first, and he ended up taking over as the lead artist. But he's also the lead artist on Habroxia 2. He contributed to Super Perils of Baking, where you'll see the Sabrina character playable. He worked on games like Binding of Isaac, Shushimi, Cave Story Plus, Freedom Finger, Butt Runner, Retro City Rampage DX Plus, Super Bernie World, and more. Good to have you here, Wayne.
Thanks for having me.
And then, last but not least, certainly Lachlan, the guy who I first met when he sent Twin Breaker promo art. He ended up being our artist for the game box. He then was the lead artist for Super Perils of Baking, as well as doing promo art for us there. He did the trailer for Super Perils of Baking, and he's now done the trailer for Habroxia 1. We're working with him on a future game codenamed Forest Guardian. He's also a big time animator on shows like Rise of Teenage of the Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I believe Lego Monkey Kid is that your newest show?
No, I finished on that one. I haven't updated. I'm on a Disney show now as well. Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. So Marvel Disney. It's all one giant conglomerate now. But yeah, so been around the traps somewhat. Yeah.
Good to have you with us, Lachlan.
Yeah. Thanks very much for having me. Sorry, I'm just going to turn this up so I don't have to give everyone a boosting duty in post.
No worries.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll just get straight into the questions. We had a video planned, but we're gonna forego that and go straight into the hard hitting questions. We'll start with Colin. How does it feel to now have your hands in every Lillymo game in franchise? Like I said before, you started out with Twin Breaker with us, and at the time you didn't have a role in Habroxia 1 or Perils of Baking. You've now written Super Perils of Baking, our remake, and you've now written Habroxia 1. How does it feel to be fully involved?
Sorry, I muted. It's great. I'm honored, actually. It's kind of cool to be able to go back and figure out how Habroxia would fit. I was actually just telling Dagan, my brother, on our podcast a story about kind of reverse engineering Habroxia 2 so that Habroxia made some semblance of sense. We used a lot of asset flips in Habroxia 2, so trying to figure out like why an enemy would be in this other place doing this other thing. I tried to make some sort of connection, although I don't think anyone would really care about that at all. It's neat to, first of all, I think you're incredibly talented and it's cool to be associated with you and be able to help in some way. All of you guys are. And I really come in at the very end with just marketing heft and all of that. And I try not to take any credit because it really has nothing to do with me at all. But it's cool to be able to kind of give structural stories to classic style games where people use their imaginations like we used to, at least that I did back in the day. And I always think of games, actually Super Perils of Baking's intro, as I recall, is inspired heavily by Castlevania 3. And I always used my imagination about the horror and the eeriness and all of the rest. And I still think those games are so beautiful and so haunting in some way. And it's all because of the way it pitches itself very simply and allows you to kind of use your imagination and flex, unlike the games we play today, which are awesome, but that really do a lot of that heft for you. So to just give people like a little bit of a little something about why it's happening or what's happening and all of that, and also showing a little bit of hesitance to get too deep into it either, to like write too much, because that was my lesson with Twin Breaker. Though it was supposed to be ironic that the story was so deep, it didn't hit with people like that. They didn't see the irony in it. So I'm always a little hesitant to do too much too. So it's cool to have everything connected. And by the way, my obsession with connecting all the games together. So and I'm glad that we've been able to do that so far. So it's cool to be able to go back and figure out exactly how Habroxia fits. And now we know.
Right on, man. I love what you're saying about old games where we'd use our imagination to figure out what's going on. And that actually reminds me of one of the reasons I really wanted to team up with you when we were first talking about that way back then was at the time you had just put out a Let's Play with your brother Dagon of the game Jackal.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys were just like talking about, shooting the shit, making up stories for all these guys that were dying off and like what these guys were doing there. It just reminded me so much of like why I love games and what playing games was like growing up, just talking to friends about what you think's going on.
Totally. I think there's just certain hallmark games to me that are not story heavy, but that have this really wonderful presentation that suggests that there's a story there. I think of Castlevania 2 as being a good example of that. I think Mega Man 4, that intro when he's on the top of the train and it's this beautiful animation, and Mega Man 3 obviously was rushed out and they never got a chance to really take advantage of that beautiful music and do an intro. So you finally get it. And it's just very simple text about how, this new doctor comes around and Wily's been, vanquished and all of this. And it just gets your mind rolling a little bit. And I wanted to do that for Habroxia, where instead, and you can skip it. Most people probably will skip it, I imagine, but it's cool that it's there if you're interested. Very similar to, like you said, the games that we grew up enjoying and loving before we had the benefit of so much fidelity that allowed us to skip those parts.
Yeah, one of the things that we changed with Habroxia 1, just a small touch, was like we did the same thing with Habroxia 2 in an update recently, where now if you sit in a menu, like on the main menu for like I think it's 5 minutes or something like that, it'll just play like an attract mode of gameplay, and then it'll loop the story intro again, which is something I always liked from old games. So we've just implemented that as well.
Nice. I love it. Yeah, I think, and I appreciate being able to just be involved in that cursory way. I am, like you guys are mega busy. I am mega busy with Last Stand. So I've realized this with the role-playing game we're making, where I had these great ambitions of getting really into the weeds and stuff. And now I realize that it's basically going to be, I'm going to go in and make edits obviously and stuff, but it's going to be written by someone else basically, with story and characters by me. And I'm like, I guess I'll take it. That's as good as I can do considering the time and energy I have to put into it. And so it's cool to be able to just come in and figure out these small problems and then let you guys do your work, which you do so well.
All right. So going to my next question, I want to go back to the beginning of when we were first talking. I want to know what you remember from our early discussions before we agreed to make Twin Breaker, and I'm curious what made you think that you wanted to team up with me back then, having only seen the original Perils of Baking, which was a okay first game, but nothing special.
Well, I remember that you and I talked. It would be interesting to go back into the emails, but I remember you and I talked specifically about how we had this notion that there are old school inspired games and then there are games that are old school, and that we wanted to make games that were old school. And this was something I was reflecting on recently in playing Sea of Stars, which is awesome. And I'm near the end of it and I love it. And I think it's beautiful, but I was saying it gives me some hesitancy about our role-playing game, not because I don't think our role-playing game is beautiful, but because I think our role-playing game is pure. It is exactly what you would have found, not inspired by or what you might remember things looked like. And I think you and I are kind of on the same page there with a game like when I played Perils, which is, fine. It's a standard first try project. You and I both have lampooned it to death, no doubt. But it's this thing that exists and was cool. But Twin Breaker, I felt like when you were messing around with it, it was like, this is just the game. It's perfect. It's actually kind of just perfect. It doesn't have any pretense. It's not going to ask you for too much money or too much time. And that's kind of my pocket. I love that kind of stuff. I love all these big AAA games and the games that take you all this time too, but that's the kind of stuff we grew up with. So I felt like you and I were simpatico in that sense, that you weren't trying to make like Limbo or something, which is cool. And that's like, you and I want to make Breath of Fire. You and I want to make, DuckTales or Mega Man. And I don't want to make like when I was jockeying with Hasbro, kind of jokingly trying to get the G.I. Joe license for us, I was like, I want to make an 8-bit or a 16-bit game straight up. I'm not trying to make something like mega perfect, way forward. Maybe Innie creates Mega Man 9 or 10, but not and he creates Azor Striker or whatever. And I just feel like you and I understood each other. And I don't know everyone else that works on the games as well as I know you, Barry, but I feel like everyone's kind of in that pocket in some sense. At least with our games, they might feel differently about other games. I always tell people I have no interest in making 2.5D games. I certainly have no interest in making 3D games. And I think that you and I we just share that, and that's obvious. I mean, that's just truly obvious. And I think by the time you and I worked together as well, Habroxia, I thought was an impressive next step. When you go back and look, and I replayed Habroxia recently on Steam, and it's like, this is really, really good. And then by the time you get to Twin Breaker, I think it gets great. And then by the time you get to Habroxia 2, like, I really think we're cooking with gas with Habroxia 2. And I kind of feel that way about Super Perils as well. I think that it didn't find its audience, which is unfortunate, but I'm so pleased that so many people like Habroxia 2. So hopefully a lot of those guys will go back and check it out now that it's going to be on PC and hopefully, on PS5 soon thereafter. Is that what you remember, by the way, as well? That you and I kind of understood the fundamental precept of we're making old games?
Yeah, I think that's always been very clear both between us, and it's also been very clear that we both put that forward. Everyone knows that about both of us. So I think everyone on the team who's working with us knows what they're in for. And I think there's also a shared desire to make that same type of game, whether or not there's some other interests that they might have to work on other types of projects.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you and I are definitely on the same page, it was funny with everything that went on with Unity lately. A couple people asked me, like Mr. Maddie Plays asked me, he's like, are you guys work on Unity? I'm like, no, we work on Game Maker. We don't need anything else. We don't need anything more than that. So, yeah, it's good. That is the premise of our partnership. And maybe one day when we get bought out by Sony and become a first party, and we get paid $150 million, they'll let us make one of these games every month. That'd be pretty fun.
Okay, let's go to Wayne now, and I'm going to take you back as well. What do you remember about when I first reached out to you, and how did you feel about taking on more work than planned when Adrian, the other artist who only speaks French, I don't know how much I've talked about this, the first artist for Habroxia only spoke French, and I worked with him completely through like Google Translate, and needless to say, there were frustrations and miscommunications.
I don't think I knew that. That's awesome.
So
I didn't know that either.
yeah, so when we decided that he wasn't going to be, well, first of all, he was going to do all of the art, but then that wasn't working out, so we brought Wayne in to help him out, and then Wayne just ended up taking over basically the majority of the art on the project. So what were you thinking when that happened, and what makes you such a cool dude that you're able to take over other people's work and see it through like that?
So it's funny, like right when you kind of reach, I think initially when I reached out to you, you were still working with the other artist, and you weren't like totally sure if you wanted somebody else on the project. And at that point, I was like kind of in a bind. Most of my projects had dried up, and I was just like kind of poking around for work, looking for just good projects to work on. Because I don't know, that's what's everyone's dream, right? Work on cool stuff. And shoot 'em ups are like my wheelhouse. Like that's my bread and butter. That's just what I love to make. And when you were like essentially wanted me to take everything over, like it came at that perfect time where I had no work at that point, and I think I had just finished up doing the stuff for Retro City Rampage.
Okay.
And at that point, I was like, I don't know where I'm going. I gotta pay the bills, and you just, I don't know, you hit me at that perfect time, and then I don't know, we kind of slowly made that bond, and kind of like you were saying, Colin, like we have that similar feeling of you want to make old games like old games, and not so much. I don't know. There's a certain weird sheen with new games where like it's its own thing, and it doesn't have that same. I don't know that there isn't that same like heart to it, I guess, in a way.
That's what you're saying that I was gonna fill in heart, but I didn't want to be too presumptuous. So I'm glad you said that. Okay, so did you think we'd make another game together, and did you think it would be another Habroxia title?
You know what? At that point, I wasn't totally certain because we kind of waxed back and forth about making other games and trying a bunch of different projects. And when he more or less like came back to me with let's do another Habroxia, I was like, let's do it. Like, and Habroxia too. Like, it was nice to like you kind of let me get my hands a little more on the design end of things, and we instead of just like putting the art polish on it, we worked a lot more hand in hand, and I feel like in that way, like Habroxia too, like really shows that.
Yeah, for sure. I think that was a huge strong suit of the project, and I think that was mainly just the timing, really, because I think Habroxia One was mostly put together in terms
Mm-hmm.
of programming and like level layouts and stuff when you came on. So yeah, I was glad to have you play that role, and I always appreciate your impact on stuff, man. You got such a good eye for like game design and just everything about making games, especially old school games. So glad to have you
I
aboard.
live it like that. I spend like half my time just like looking at old games and researching old games, and even like the weirdest of weird stuff. You were talking about like watching Colin play Jackal. Like that is literally one of my favorite games. It's such a good
Oh,
game.
you and Dagan would get lost together. He's like completely been obsessed with that game since I can remember. It's so funny. He has a brother now, another brother.
All right, let's move over to Lachlan for a bit now. I remember us first talking when I saw your post. I alluded to this earlier about the fan art. Do you often create fan art for projects in general? And is there anything like cool you'd like to mention, like a game or a show or something you've done cool fan art for before?
Um, I do sometimes. It's a good sort of like it's a good way to test out a new skill or trying to like keep your drawing skills up, and it takes the thinking out of it. You just go, I'm just going to draw a beautiful Joe, or I'm going to draw this, because it's a challenge of trying to recreate something there that already exists, but how you would interpret it. But yeah, I mean, I don't venture out. I'm kind of too busy these days now to do that. But for you guys, it was more that it was like a fun, like colliding of worlds. Seeing Chris and Colin in a game, and I was like, how would that look as a, you know, what would the box art look like for that? And so that was kind of the initial inspiration. That's where the big like I don't know where we saw it. I think it was in the original pixel art, but like the big bubble shoulder pads and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, this is very bubblegum crisis,
Hmm.
80s sort of like anime vibe. And like, how could I do that if it was like mashed with like Colin's love with G.I. Joe? Like, if I could do this like two-tone. Anyway, I could wax lyrical about that for
And then we
days.
saw those fan made GI Joes that were clearly
Yeah,
inspired by that design that you did.
Yeah, that was super cool. But yeah,
that's
dude. But guys, if
so
I had the
surreal.
art, if I could do the art that you guys do, I'm so jealous. You know, I'm jealous of everyone's like skills in this company and that work on our games. But all I would do is draw and render and just make Mega Man art all day. If I could draw like you guys did, I would draw a Quick Man over and over and over again until he looked cooler and cooler. I'm just so jealous of you guys. You guys are great. And we were saying, you know, it is the box art. It's the that's our greatest box art. I think is Twin Breaker, like by a
Oh,
long shot. I think.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it was just that sort of idea, and I was like, well, this would be fun. I'll just do this as a throwaway. I almost never share these because it's like I tend to hate everything that comes out of my hand, like onto any sort of digital or traditional screen. Not that screens are traditional, but anyway. Um, but yeah, so it's like I'll throw like this is just I've got a couple of weeks off at the end of work at the end of the year. I can flex those muscles on something that's not for the studio, and I took a swing, and you know that's the butterfly effect now, the sliding doors moment, and now I'm here. So it is kind of surreal to now be on a recording talking about it post script. But yeah, I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I've met you guys, and I'm glad I've been able to collaborate on a lot of the things that we've been doing. It's a nice change of pace from doing um, studio work as well, and having a bit more control over, or not necessarily control, but just having a bit more like input. Um, yeah,
I think it's like that with almost everyone on the team, really, where there's like this one moment where we just happened to like I saw Wayne's Twitter where he was posting about loving shoot 'em ups or something like that, and I'm like, here's this pixel artist posting crazy art who loves shoot 'em ups. I need help with getting this pixel art done. I don't know if he's ever going to respond to me. He's clearly a talented guy. I'm just going to message him and see what happens. And now Wayne's been in my life for years, and similar story with Colin. And your art, you reached out and we started talking, and then you're just part of the team now. It's crazy how that's happened so many times.
There's that big like connection of like passion with everyone. You kind of feel that you see it like in the end product more than anything.
For
Yeah,
sure.
100%. I would agree. And I think it's more indicative of like you as a person, Barry, that you attract that. And I think it's you as a collaborator, like have been one of the better people I've worked with, because it does feel like a collaboration and less like a dictation. Like you're on board in equal measure, and it's not like it feels like the hierarchy is like more level there, and it's more like, oh, making a game or doing a project with a friend rather than a
I
client.
appreciate that. I don't want to like force you guys all to be my friends or anything, but it does really feel like I've got like these friends working with me on my team. We're all working towards something together. It does feel great having that bond.
You're very flexible. I think at least you've shown me that, because I come in often very late and very randomly with just random things that I want to change or that I think need to be changed, and you're very patient with that. Just in that, I think you always understand. I think the choices often make the game better. I think the map in
I
Habroxia
was
One
just thinking of that when you
yeah
were saying that.
is a huge thing. Like I saw that, I just visually saw that again, just like every other thing I try to draw or show you, I have to either draw it like a 5-year-old or find some other image that shows it. And I think I found some other image that that showed it. You guys totally understood it and executed on it, and it will make the game better. I wish I could be more involved day to day. Like I kind of fantasize about being a game dev as opposed to being in podcasting and media, which I've been in for so long. And maybe I'll make that transition one day. I don't know, but I doubt it actually, because it's just Last Stand is so reliant on me, and there's so many people working for it and all the rest. But it makes me feel like we already do these great things, and we could just even ratchet it up, you know. And just little pieces. So I've always appreciated your flexibility. The same thing with what was it, Twin Breaker, where I wrote the dialogue in Twin Breaker literally like we were about to basically submit the game for certification, I think, and I'm like, I'm going to add dialogue to the game, and we added all of these dialogue things like in between stages and stuff like that. And you were very patient and flexible, and I think again it made the game better. Again, it was to make it more and more verbose, which probably actually didn't execute on the idea as well. God, I wish people got it better, but that's my fault. So yeah, I appreciate your flexibility. You are I, again, being someone that more covered game devs than was a game dev or is a game dev, and I don't really consider myself a game dev. I write some of this stuff, I guess, but I've covered and interviewed so many different people, and it's such a fucking pressure cooker to make games. And so your very laissez-faire attitude, I think, is much appreciated by many people that work with you.
I'm glad it comes across that way. I'm definitely a little bit of a bundle of stress at times when I'm trying to get things done, and you know, like you say, if it makes the game better and we can do it, then I'm happy to oblige. The only time I like might say no or something like that is when we really just can't for whatever reason, whether it's time or money or someone else can't commit to do that sort of thing, and so I can't like commit us as a team to do it. Anyway, let's move to the next question for Lachlan. Okay, so you've done art for us on Perils, Twin Breaker, and Habroxia franchises. Do you have a favorite game or character that you like to draw for, or do you have a favorite of your work that you like the most?
Oh, of the stuff we've done with Lillymo?
Yeah, of any of the
Yeah,
franchises you've worked on with us, do you have a favorite, and in terms of working on it or in terms of the result?
that's a good question. I think I am
I'm
proud of
looking at them
what.
right now.
Yeah, I am proud of Super Perils, and I have to say that was so exciting to see the response to the special edition boxes as well. They were the coolest thing I've seen. Like, and the expedited nature in which they were received, I think, is a credit to you guys too. Like, you can see just up here, I even did it right. There's a Psychonauts 2 collector's box.
Mm.
I ordered that from the company that was doing it. It took like over a year to come, and it was like the game was the Psychonauts 2 PS4 game was on like store shelves and EB and like our, you know, equivalent to Best Buy or whatever here for like 9 months before that. I was like, and when it arrived, I was like, why did this take that long? So
Yeah, you almost forget
just-
you ordered it. I've had
yeah,
that
and
experience too.
yeah, I didn't forget because they kept reminding me that it was delayed. But anyway, anyway, sorry, being salty about that. But I'm just excited to have seen something that I've made. Like, it is surreal to see something that you were like, oh god, I'm doing this fucking wrong or something like that, and then seeing that printed on a box and in people's hands, and seeing people like tweet about it. It's like, this arrived, this is so cool, and being like, whoa, yeah, that's like something that's hard to wrap my head around. So I guess that probably the whole Super Perils package, because I think I was more involved in that than any of the other projects, and sort of seeing that. And Henry helped out heaps on that too, obviously, to get that over the
Yeah,
line.
for
So
sure.
it was exciting.
We
to
all
see.
love Henry.
Yes, yeah, and in fact, I wouldn't know what our titular main character from Habroxia 1 would look like if not for Henry's secret screen in Super Peril.
Mhm.
So it was nice to have that referred to, even though I thought he was a bit old looking initially. But I guess he just got to making kids later in life. Or
Yeah,
yeah,
he's seen some shit, you know.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
war hit him hard. I was gonna
Yeah.
say.
yeah, he just immediate gray streaks. That's PTSD in hair format, I guess.
In space time travel, you never know what's
Yeah.
going on there.
Yeah,
What do
it's
I
like
call it?
Go through
The
a black
Nebula
hole.
War or something? I called something
Yeah, I was gonna
weird.
say the interstellar planet. What's the one where it's like they're stuck on it for, and it comes back, it's been 40 years, like that.
Yeah, Miller's Planet in Interstellar.
Yeah. So
Major inspiration for some of the stuff that's in our games. So that's funny that
yeah,
you referenced that.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, probably was, to quote Colin, a bit verbose with that response, but I'd say Super Perils, short answer, would be that package, that whole experience, I think.
Yeah, you did an awesome job on that, and we're gonna do another edition of it. I think we're gonna announce it soon. I don't know what it is, but it's gonna be a different. I told you guys in the chat, right? I don't want to spoil it here, but
Yeah,
like,
I don't
so
wanna-
I think that people are really gonna dig that as well, and like just seeing things from a different perspective. Yeah, it all came together really nicely.
All right, I've got a bit of a complex, multi-layered one here for Colin. So I've spent some time working on getting our games improved for Steam and Steam Deck, and not too much time, but lots of little features and work went into that. And then I was thinking about that, and we haven't sold too many copies on Steam yet. It's obviously a huge platform. And then I was thinking about how I put more work into the iArcade release of our games, more work than I put into Steam, just to get it running smoothly. Took time, and then that platform went out of business, so we're not making any more money off of that work. And then I was thinking about the PlayStation Vita, which is a system that didn't have many copies, but we sold a lot on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just confused. I don't know. Not ask you to like explain why or anything, but like, what do you think about that? What do you think about us spending time on the Steam versions of our games when they aren't currently selling that well? Trying to make an effort there. What do you think about the effort we made towards iArcade that ended up not really paying off as much as we would have liked? And then what do you think about the returns we saw on PS Vita, which is a machine that most people wouldn't see returns on?
Yeah, I think those are all interesting questions. First of all, the iArcade stuff doesn't bother me just because I think you have to sometimes take reasonable risks. It reminds me when some people were porting, like a game like Towerfall was an Ouya game, right? First and foremost. And
Mhm.
sometimes like great things end up on weird platforms and you try and it's probably not going to work. And I think we knew that from the beginning that it probably wasn't going to work, but I think it's like a good thing to just see, like, I don't know what happens. This is important and serious, but we're not a corporation where we have to really pinch nickels and dimes and just not take risks like that or outside risks, and that they'll have these horrible ramifications. And we made a little bit of revenue, it's like, it's not like we didn't make anything from it. So, there's that. So I think that was fine. And I think sometimes you strike out and that's okay too. And then I think our ubiquity is really important for our products. people are surprised by this because I'm so well known as being a PlayStation person, and I am. I'm a hardcore PlayStation fan. I never have denied that, and don't apologize for that. But I'm also a businessman and an entrepreneur, and we aren't getting paid by Sony. We're not owned by Sony. The only game that we like, I know that you began by releasing your games on PlayStation, but that was to do it easily by, and people I don't think really recognize that it wasn't really a bias as much as it's like it's easy to do it on one platform, the platform we probably care the most about. And Twin Breaker specifically was for Sacred Symbols, which is my PlayStation podcast, so it made sense to do it as an exclusive. And if we do Tribreaker or whatever in the future, then that will also be a PlayStation exclusive for a little while, I would imagine. Just because I think that that's kind of makes it special, and I think that that game did actually really well. It actually set expectations that all of our games would do that well, and we quickly learned that the market is just a fickle thing. So I think the ubiquity is important, and I think being on Steam is vital. I give Steam a lot of plaudits on our show for just its community hub features, its deep forums, everything from the most intricate questions answered about a game to really nice strategy guides. The Pixel Remaster Final Fantasy games, for instance, I've been using strategy guides that are on Steam that have been really good for the final or for the PlayStation versions of them. So that's a place I want to be, and that's a place I want to be big, and that's a place I think we can be. We need to be there when the moment, or if the moment comes. Let's say if the moment comes that people are ready to execute. There's this beautiful page, unlike what you would find on Xbox or PlayStation or Switch, where it shows all of our games people can get in and involved. So I think it's almost in some way most vital for us to be on Steam, even though we sell a disproportionate amount on PlayStation. And I think we sell a disproportionate amount on PlayStation because of me. And I think probably because of you too, because of your predilection of releasing games first on Vita and supporting Vita when a lot of people weren't. I think it was actually a stroke of genius. It kind of sucks for us that we weren't able to get more games onto it, because I think that would have been big for us. We could have relied on 20, 30, 40,000 copies of a bigger game selling on Vita, especially I think if it was still around now when everyone had basically fallen off of it. That's why I wish that they just left those tools available, although I know it had the backdoor effect for us of allowing us to move on to a newer version of Game Maker and kind of abandon old tools and stuff, which was good. But I miss the Vita, and that's kind of, I think, Barry, back to your original question to me about us meeting, that was also a major binding point for us, is that I was a real mark for the Vita. Everyone knew that forever. One of my most notorious strikeouts ever was saying that the Vita would outsell the 3DS. That editorial still gets circulated today, and people still make fun of me. They still discover it today. So I've always been all in on the Vita, and I think that it's a shame that we can't really leverage it anymore. It makes me wonder about if we can leverage similar success on the Switch or the Switch successor. Although I think that storefront, as I understand it, is just so flooded that it makes it hard for us. That's why I think that's my personal theory of why Super Perils is our weakest selling game, simply by virtue of when we released it, because that was during all of that traffic that was just ruining everything. And so I think that answers all your questions, touches on everything you were talking about. iArcade, fine, make attempts. Steam, vital place for us to be. Vita, I think a lot of it has to do with Sacred Symbols, but I think a lot of it also has to do with just your own preference for that console and supporting it early and first. And I think that people by the thousands recognize that, and that's kind of all you need. We don't have players by the millions or hundreds of thousands, but we have players by the thousands. They recognize your name.
Yeah, I'd agree with you completely on all of those points. Steam, I think, is a platform I'd really like to build up in the future, and that's why I've been giving it a little bit of special attention lately. And I think launching this release early on Steam makes sense, not only for that reason, but because it wasn't out on Steam yet. And we have people can get the old version of the game already on PS4, Xbox, or Switch, but there's no version to get on Steam yet. So we've got it ready. And in terms of PlayStation preference, at the time when I started making games, I think PlayStation was my preferred console, but that's changed every generation pretty much for me. I mean, I started out as a Super Nintendo guy and N64, GameCube. I got the PS2, I got the PS1 late. Then I got the 360, and that was my main system. Then it red ringed on me twice. So then I became a PlayStation guy with the PS3 and the probably like midway through that generation. And these days I play Xbox a lot, even though it doesn't have big first party titles except for I guess Starfield. But it's the system I've got in the office I work in on that TV that I have the dev kits at. So it's the one I play the most. I just download all the same indies are there for the most part. All the same third party stuff's there.
Dude, I'd love to hit on Xbox. I just Xbox is frustrating for me for another, like, just for all the more subscription stuff and the gatekeeping kind of stuff that they're doing over there. It's making it harder to make money on Xbox in some way, but that's a story for another time. But I think it's cool that you have that. I always, like I say, I call myself graduated from Nintendo. So obviously that's where NES, SNES, N64, GameCube, that was my pocket. But PS1, PS2, all that stuff too. So I've remained more consistent, I guess, in that sense. But I want to be big wherever the player is. So that goes into the IR arcade thing of being like, well, it's an outside chance, but it's a chance nonetheless worth taking. It's the same reason, Barry, why I thought it was important for us, and like one of the important decisions I feel like I kind of pressed us to make was to buy the rights of our various games and publishing rights on various platforms back from East Asia Soft, who we love. I love East Asia Soft, but it's like I want to own all of our stuff. Like that way, what if one of the games is big and then people go back and buy those things and we benefited from later, and we don't have to have any partners outside of us. And so, yeah, I think that gets into it.
Yeah, you definitely planted that seed in my head before we even made that choice of that would be ideal for us in the future. And you were completely right. By the time we made the decision, I think I was the one who was like, yeah, let's do it. Like I was trying to tell you, like, let's do it now. Because it wasn't, and for me, it was the reasons you said, and it was also just, well, I don't want to make this sound bad, but I just have issues with like credit, I guess, like people getting credit for things. And there were some listings and stuff like that where it would say like publisher East Asia Soft, developer East Asia Soft, and then I was like, what? Like you guys might get second billing as developer, but only billing or even first billing, that really just bothered me. Even if it wasn't done by them, or even if it wasn't malicious or anything like that, I just didn't like seeing it. So I was like, ooh, we gotta do something about that situation there too.
Yeah,
Like, I don't
that
want
stuff
that
either.
game getting famous and then people saying, oh, that East Asia Soft game Habroxia is cool. What is East Asia Soft doing next? Like, no offense to them, but that's our game. So I'm glad we solved that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think that I felt a similar way. And it's funny because I've known those guys for so long, going all the way back to Rainbow Moon, which I wrote a ton about on IGN back in the day. It was like some random role-playing game that they put out from SideQuest Studios, the guys that did Soldner, if you guys remember. Those are really good
I
arcade
played
shooters.
all those, yeah.
Yeah, Soldner and Soldner X2, those are awesome games, and they were ported to Vita later. But it reminds me a lot of what happened with Ready at Dawn and the Order 1886. I don't know if you guys remember when that game was first shown, Santa Monica Studios' name was all over it. And
that's right.
only in that first trailer, because a lot of people, including me and others, were like, it's not really right that you guys are, because they were like ex-dev, second party producing it or whatever. And it's like, but Ready at Dawn is a Ready at Dawn game. It has nothing to do with you. And you can see that change later on, that it probably bothered them too. So I think that's a totally salient. Dude, it's all about credit. I mean, it's like a band putting out a song anonymously. Why would you you don't do that? You do it so that people can find you. So I totally appreciate that. And we don't have to worry about it anymore because we made the deal. I thought it was a very fair deal. And we still work with East Asia Soft to this day. They still do our physical publishing.
No hard feelings with them at all.
Not at all. No.
Okay, another one for you. Are there any examples of the art, music, or presentation of the story elements that you wrote, like matching up with exactly what you had in mind when you were writing it? And then on the other side, is there any example of something that came out maybe different or not what you were expecting in that regard?
No, I think it's funny in Habroxia 1 specifically, because I was just watching it and I pulled it up on my screen, is that the art gets the feeling that I wanted for this game as I like retconned it, which was that I wanted it to take place in our system. So even though the visuals, when you even think about our map, it doesn't really make sense by scale. It doesn't make sense by order, but it kind of makes this linear move towards the Oort cloud. And so to see, I'm looking at a frame now where it's like Jupiter, it seems like some moons are flung around it, but you can kind of see Earth, sun. The sun would be too big but from Jupiter for that, but it all works together to show this palette, I guess, of what I wanted the game to be, because Habroxia 2 is about the human invasion of the alien system. And I never really expected that I would be able to go back and figure out what happened here. And so I had to do that. And so I wanted to really line it up so that you worked from Earth outward as you're kind of pushing them away. And I think the art really captures that. The level of darkness in it, I think, is fun too, but also the use of color, which I think is very reminiscent of our system, like all the gas giants and the beautiful moons and stuff like that. So I have like a real obvious obsession with space and time travel and space travel and my weird generation ships and all the kind of shit I put in Twin Breaker. And so it's cool to see. But I am, as I was saying earlier, and crediting these guys and the artists, is generally that have worked with us is just, I have none of that, like just not even one iota of it. But I can see it and visualize it, and to see people again understand the aesthetic that Barry and I share is awesome. So I think it all works really well. I don't think I've ever seen something that where I'm like, no, it this doesn't work or whatever. It's perfect because it's not only exponentially better than anything I could execute on, but it's like someone taking the baton. It shouldn't really be about what I think it looks like only, or even exclusively, or at all. It's like what I think happened, and almost seeing someone else's interpretation visually is actually kind of the game in my sense. And I don't know if you guys agree, but it's like kind of letting go of I've experienced that a lot in the role playing game, and seeing the different assets and stuff, and just being like, no, this is it. Like this all started on a bulletin board, and all these different things I stapled to it, and then all these things I wrote up, and all this, and then it's like the next person took it and did something with it. I think that's kind of the beauty of our medium that makes it kind of special. So I think it's all been well executed, and that's a perfectly honest answer.
With that as well, sorry, I just wanted to jump in. I feel
Please.
like what you're saying there is just a sign of a good, director or creative director as well, is that it's like, I'm not the best at this part, but I'm going to get the people on board that are, and just let them do their thing, like within the context. Like I think having a good brief is more important than almost anything as an artist working for a director, because it's one of the hardest things. I don't know if you feel this too, Wayne, where it's like, oh, just do what you want. And I'm like, it doesn't really matter what I want, obviously, because it's your thing. But having the sort of freedom to work within the sort of confines of a clear objective, I think is like, it just makes our job easier, I feel, because you just go, okay, well, I've got all this freedom to play, but I'm not going to go like, Bethesda open world sort of like get lost and wander into a Fallout camp or something, and then be like, why the hell am I here? Like, you can sort of follow a path within the bounds of that brief, that where you can sort of play. And I think it's good to have a certain limit or creative set of limits too, so that you're not like, lost in space, to use a Habroxia sort of metaphor. But yeah, anyway, I just thought I would want to jump in there for that.
Yeah, you kind of like give us that box, like, here's the things that you want in the box, put them in the box how you want them.
Yeah, that's I'm glad that you guys see that, because it's so funny that you describe it that way, because I was thinking of like, it's drawing the parameters more and more in, until I guess you get to the visual. Like at the end of the day, it's like that the box is smallest when we see the visual. So everyone kind of puts their take on it, because all I wanted was Twin Breakers about war, right? And that was like what was supposed to be that was what was supposed to be so funny about it. It's about like war and devastation and this escape from Earth and all of this stuff. And then Habroxia takes place far, far into the future, where I want like an Earth that has obviously like global government and some sort of like Pax Romana of peace and prosperity. But the entire time they've just been pulsing evidence of their existence in the space indiscriminately. Nuclear explosions and radio waves and all the different things they're doing just in their own system. And boom, it all collapses in on them when they're discovered by an alien invasion. That should be enough to set your guys, no doubt, and many other people's imaginations in a million different directions. And I'm anxious now. So it's like, now I want to see what you do with that, because I don't know. Like I have no better idea than you, but that's kind of the parameter of it. And so it's cool to get the collaboration of it. I really appreciate it. And it's very unusual for me too, just in my own experience in media, because it's being a journalist and all of that, or strategy guide writer or whatever. It's very myopic, and like, this is what I'm doing. Just no, I don't need any advice. I don't need anyone else. And you can't work like that in games. And I knew that immediately. And that's what I think it's exercising this whole unique part of my brain of just letting go and understanding that there are such deeply creative people that know better answers than me.
Yeah, I really enjoyed watching. Like, I don't know how much you guys know this, but like sometimes me and Wayne will like we basically just shared each other like a whole bunch of NES game intros and endings. And just like, look at that one, look at that one. What do you think of that? We're like thinking like
throw some out there. What are some of the ones that you guys were talking about?
Was it like Abadox? Abadox, that's what.
Yeah, the with the big guts planet. I love that stuff.
You rattle off a few. I'll see if I could find the notes I had, because I got all my notes in the same notebook here.
I want to say one you kept going back to was Journey to the Earth.
Yes, Journey to Silius, Gunnack, Silkworm, Scat, Abadox, To the Earth, Strider, Top Gun, Air Fortress, Darius Twin. We were looking at all sorts of stuff on NES and Super NES.
I think Habroxia is very, depending on where you are in the world, either salamander or a life force. I think there's like some obvious, like, I don't know, just that our game feels like a lost Konami game in some sense. Like and that's like in the silver box Konami, the best Konami. Oh my goodness. I think
Yeah, for those examples, we were just like, look at this one frame of an ending, right? Like it didn't even have to be a shooter game. It was just like creative ideas and interesting presentations of sprites. And
beauty
Wayne
on NES is endless, dude.
nailed it.
Endless beauty on the NES in so many different games. Glad you guys. That's the stuff to mine. That's the whole point. That's why we found each other. Love it.
Even that like weird off the beaten path stuff, like those games that everyone says is like really bad, is the stuff that inspires me the most. Because
I feel
that there's all those like little mechanics and stuff that they just didn't figure out, and you get those little pieces, and it sparks that perfect I don't know, that perfect energy from that.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw, Barry. They're releasing A Boy and His Blob. I think presently on PS4 and Switch and stuff. And I used to love that game when I was a kid. It's a David Crane game, and it's just not very good at all. But it's very nostalgic for me because it's so unique. It's such a unique idea. But they just didn't, like you said, they didn't know what to do. It was just like, here's the idea, and it's cool to go back and see those structurally sound, or I guess structurally unsound final games that they just pushed out the door.
Yeah, but they got that gem in them, that one
Yeah.
gem to find.
Definitely. There's a billion of those.
I think that's something. Sorry to jump in, but I think that's
Go
something
for
as
it.
well, is that you learn more from the bad stuff, I think, than the really good stuff. Because the really good stuff seems more like opaque, I think, in a way. It's kind of like you don't see the person or I mean, you can. There's definitely, like, I'd say something that Barry and I both love is like Lollipop Chainsaw. You can definitely see Suda in that. That's right, Suda 51.
Yep.
No,
Yep.
yeah, okay, cool. I'm not just gonna get a weeb fatwa or something on me now. But, yeah, I think there's definitely characteristics in that, and that game is flawed too, I would say. But I think the flaws are what make it appealing. I think the package is better. It's the sum of the parts are better than the whole. I think I just butchered that too. Anyway, but yeah, I think that's something to say as well, is that you just learn more from those experiences because you can kind of see the logic, you can see the thinking without having a conversation with the artist or the creator. You can sort of go, oh, I can tell what you were trying to do if you had just done this. Or I guess that's where the game dev brain comes in for us too, is that now we're trying to do the things where they would have, learned, standing on the shoulders of
I love
giants.
that you bring up Lollipop Chainsaw, because I really do feel like all of those Grasshopper games from that era, none of them are perfect. Like, I wouldn't give any of them 10 out of 10 or anything like that, but they've all got like so much style and passion and love in them that, like, I'd rather play any of those games than a lot of the like 9 or 10 out of 10 games that are just the same as every other game. It's like, who cares? We made the same game again and it looks a little bit better. I'd rather play Lollipop Chainsaw, as bad as it is. All right, let's get back on track with the question for Wayne. After Habroxia 0, which is our project after Habroxia 1, our next Habroxia project, would you rather work on, and this is what you feel now, because I know this is a discussion we'll have after Habroxia 0, but right now, what do you think after Habroxia 0? Would you rather work on Habroxia 3 with us, work on a different game with Lillymo, or just take a break before Habroxia 3? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Honestly, it depends on where I'm at with everything. I have a lot of projects on the go all the time. I just like creating. I've always been the kind of person that, I don't know, whether it was music or art or games, everything. Like, I want to get my hands in it. I want to make new stuff. I want to try new things. So like it always depends on just what's going on at that point. And Like maybe I'm a little burnt out at that point, or maybe I'm just like inspired to just jump right in on the new thing, or you kind of in the in between. Like sometimes you get a little bit of that hit of inspiration, and you want to just crank out the new like concept, or you just want to do like a couple like ships or something, or depending what the project is, of course. I don't know. There's something about like going in on the moments where everything feels right. Like you don't want to just like kind of force it,
Mm-hmm.
because then you're just making whatever you blob out instead of something that you're passionate about.
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of, well, like sales, you don't want to say like, oh, if it sells well, then I'll make it. But I honestly do think if Habroxia Zero was a huge hit and everyone was like, oh yeah, we love this is the best one yet, I think that would probably like light a fire, like, ooh, that Habroxia 3 game we were talking about, everyone's looking for that. So I think that'll definitely play a role for me in like what we do next after Habroxia Zero.
Yeah, you kind of get that like hit of serotonin when someone likes what you're doing, or they're excited about it, or if there's immense sales. I mean, no matter what, like there's still a business aspect to it.
Yeah, there has to be.
I also think
All
it's
right.
important, if I might, Barry, sorry to interrupt you. I
Go
just
for
want to
it.
say, I think it's important that if we do Habroxia 3, which I think we would, that we do it sooner rather than later, right? Like I also want us to move on and like let things go, keep things interconnected, and we can revive Habroxia and do like Habroxia X or something like that in the future. But it's like I want us to have that more old school PS3 era PlayStation mentality, like PS2 to PS3, where it's like everyone move on. Like it's time. Like what else can we do? And so I already know what I want Habroxia 3 to be about, which is like the culmination of the fight between the two sides. And then we just be like, all right, that's it for now. And then I'll write some weird arcane shit in the game in the future where Sabrina somehow is in that as well. But in the meantime, yeah, we'll leave it alone. I don't know how you feel about that, but like the series I want to get back to even more is Twin Breaker. Just because I feel like I'm it's only me probably, but I'm so frustrated that there aren't like, where are the Brick Breakers? They're so fun. Like, why aren't people taking this more seriously? I think that there is something fun about Twin Breaker, and I think we can do something with that again. I'd almost be more anxious to get back to that as well and tell more of the story that would, I guess, take place between Twin Breaker 1 and Habroxia 0, which it would be at that point. So, I don't know.
I agree with what you're saying completely about like moving on and like I don't want to make Habroxia 4, 5, 6 in the next like decade or whatever. I always thought of us as a studio that would like mostly be one-offs, always moving on to new ideas. I guess the repeated revisiting of Habroxia just kind of like happened, it's just like what we wanted to do at the time. With Habroxia Zero, I see that kind of like you're saying, like the Habroxia X, like it's kind of like a different feel, like a spin-off type experience, but still the same series. And I do have this desire with Habroxia 3. Like I have a lot of ideas for Habroxia 3 as a $20 game to like really flesh out and have it be like all of the Habroxia experiences together.
That'd be sick, dude.
And like I'll share ideas with you later, but I have like it's I see it as a $20 game that we'd spend like more than a year working on and stuff like that. And then we'd be just done after that with Habroxia. Basically, it would be like, here's everything we can do, and now it's over.
We should do like Mega Man 3, where you have to fight all of the bosses from Mega Man 2 again in Mega Man 3. Like, we have this whole boss calling. I think it'll be really. Yeah, I have a vision for what I want the story to be, like just a complete free for all between the two sides, and in some other system where basically they both think that the answer to the conflict is here. There's some special weapon or some special something about the system, and they both kind of come upon it and battle it out in this system, which we would explore in the game, which I think would be cool. Yeah, I don't know, man. I want to do whatever. My answer to those questions always is like, whatever you want to do is what I want to do too. I want you to get Forest Guardian out at some point too, like focus on that. And we've been talking about it for so long,
Yeah, that'll be well before Habroxia 3. Okay, so how does working on, this is for Wayne again, sorry. How does working on a game with Lillymo compare to other projects you've worked on? Because you've worked on with lots of different indies, lots of teams, lots of projects. What's different about working on a project with us, would you say, if there is anything that stands out at all?
a lot of it has to do with, I don't know, just kind of like the low key nature of it. It's more like just easy to work with, and that there isn't. I don't know that. No, anytime I give you anything, like you like crank it out so fast, like you just have that like instant connection in that way. Where I'm just like handing you stuff, and you're like, "Oh well, here this is already done." I was like, "Wait, this didn't take a few days or whatever." And that's not to say anything about anyone else that I'm working with. It's just like that particular like smoothness with that, and that's really cool.
I think that's excuse me. I think that's probably just because some studios have like a producer or whatever that like hands things between people, and like really it's just me like going to everyone and be like, hey, do you have this asset? Oh, you do? Okay, I'm the guy who implements that, so I'm going to do that right now. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's just like yeah, I have a lot of different like random roles that I have to fulfill, like to keep everything together, and I think that kind of speeds things up when it's like the same guy who's collecting something that's making it happen.
And especially like I don't know, when you work hand in hand with like one person or two people, there's that like rapid turnaround that like keeps the energy going, and you're always every time something new is implemented, it gives you that next idea. It creates more of that serotonin where you're like, "Ooh, I want to do this now," or it gives you, an idea to do something different or change something or fix something or make the next boss better.
Yeah, for sure. I love the nature. Like, I don't know if you feel this, but I always feel this like when I'm getting art from you and I'm designing bosses. It's like I'll show you some like chunky ass square. I'm like, hey, look at the square moving around. Look where the bullets come out of it. And you're like, hey, here's this like really cool art. And I'm like, oh, maybe I should have him do this now. And like, I see how you have these arms up here. What am I going to do with that? So I love the sort of back and forth nature that we have interacting through like designing stuff together in that way.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And the more people you have involved, the less you get of that.
That makes sense.
100%. Sorry. Yeah, that struck a chord with me, and that's why I was saying as well. It's just kind of bliss to work with you, Barry, because there's less production friction. I feel there, like you're not like having to work through steps or like, oh, this you need to consult with this person to make sure they're across this too, because if they're not, then it's going to cause this like production derailment down the line. It's like the it feels like true creativity, I guess, in a way, and why I at least I'm not sure if you feel the same way, but why I got into or why I became an artist, as weird as it is to say that, but is to have that sort of expression and have that expedited nature of like, this is the idea, I want to get it out. It's like I'm possessed by this thing, I need to be rid of it and put it out into the world so that I don't have it in me anymore. It's more of a compulsion. So I find that a difficult aspect of working in a larger project space is that it's like it doesn't feel as it, it's sort of like there's roadblocks as you go, necessary obviously, but something about the scale of these projects feels more exciting as an artist or as a creator.
That's cool to hear, man. Appreciate that. All right, so let's go to you then. the art the art for this trailer was done by you and your partner Mel. Can you
Yeah.
break down what that interaction's like, how you two divide work, and how that all came about?
Oh well, so I did the storyboards and the character designs, and Wayne was very generous to have produced all this great art, so I could just try and adapt it into into a a rendered sort of anime style. But Mel did all the ship because the ships are fairly static. It is what it is. But she painted all the ships, and then I did the effects animation over the top of them, based on a storyboard. So yeah, she's a background supervisor on the show that I work on. So she's like manages a team of background artists, but is like an exceptionally talented background painter and artist. So, and very, very good at emulating. Like if you put something in front of her and go make it look like this, you'll have it like that within an hour or two. So it's like super handy to have on board. And so it was just like, it made sense to me that this game feeling like an 80s 90s shmup, sorry to use that term, I know that's a trigger for some people, but but putting it in that world, it felt like it needed the context of like an 80s anime, like a Macross or Robotech or any of these, like Gundam, any of these sort of like staple mech anime from that era. And so I was trying to emulate that. And I actually, weird story, I actually worked with Paul Johnson. I don't know if that name rings a bell, but or Oda King, I think is his online thing, but he did that amazing Star Wars anime, the one where it was like the TIE fighter like fight a few years ago, 2014 I think came out. But yeah, I got to sort of see him and like meet him, and he was a really interesting character, and that sort of rubbed off a bit on this one too, with trying to do that more rendered 80s anime aesthetic. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah.
More or less. Yeah.
When we do the physical version of Habroxia 1 on PS5, I think one of the pieces of art we should include is the picture of the family, like that.
Oh yeah.
I think that would
that.
be. I love that, and I think that would be really cool to share.
That was, yeah, I spent maybe way too long on that, but I think it was more because I was having a lot of fun sort of putting that idea together. And then it's like, how old would Sabrina be here? And that sort of like lore building and, you know, environmental storytelling, for want of a better phrase. But
Yeah, it's dope. I love it.
All right, along that same line of questioning, how long does it take to create like the animations and the art aspects that you do for a trailer like that, or for Super Perils? And then how long does it take to like edit all the clips together? Like, what's the comparison like that for that in terms of time and work you had to do?
as far as the edit goes, that's a little quicker for me. I don't know if it's the best thing ever, but I think it works in the like the flow of what the trailer is now. But the actual editing and putting clips together is not as difficult, because it's more just like you just have dot points of like, oh, show gameplay here, then we have this, then we have that, then we have this. So it's like just go through that process. The longest thing is the animation. I think, yeah, just obviously because it's like drawing an explosion for one frame, then another frame, another. So um, it's like, how long is a piece of rope? I guess it's like, how long do we have to work on something? That's how long it takes to do the thing. So,
That's fair.
but the biggest time sink on this project, I think, was the ships were real. Like, I normally do sort of organic like character animation. So drawing ships was like, oh, like, why didn't we do this in 3D?
Oh
But
no.
why, like, the so that took a while just to do all the rendering of the panels and what have you, and probably why the ships don't move a lot. But uh, the other aspect was the effects. The effects on the last shot, the sort of big, you know, explosion, that took
Mhm.
the longest, I think, because it wasn't so much that it was like super difficult. It was just like, you know, pencil mileage, like the amount of time work that went into like, okay, drawing this on, even on threes, it's like, I think that one took me like 2 weeks of just nights after work and weekends, and just, yeah. But I hope it paid off. I think it looks good, um, relatively speaking, and it was a lot of fun to sort of do something separate to what I would normally do at work as well. So
Well, it definitely turned out great, and I appreciate you doing all that work. Which, we didn't even I didn't say, hey, when you do this trailer, I want you to do a whole shitload of like a drawing, and like you just kind of did that. So like great job, and thank you. You know.
oh, my pleasure. Again, it was just a lot of fun to be able to sort of like helm a little project, like a bit of a smaller project on a larger project, Habroxia, but like to have that. And a lot of it was like, I really wanted some sort of visual power to put out there because I don't know. I think you deserve to do well, Barry. So I'd like
Thank
to
you.
see Lillymo do well. So if I can add anything to the pile to help get eyes on it, that's what I'm here for.
We appreciate your hard work. All right, I'm going to go to some Twitter questions that I solicited yesterday. The first one comes from Gragnor, and he says, "Will there be any mod support on PC? I want to put my own sprites in so I can giggle and amuse myself in my cold, dark apartment." Well, I'm sure you can find ways to amuse yourself with the game, but we don't have mod support for Habroxia 1. I'm not against that. I honestly haven't looked into it at all, and I'm not sure what that would involve doing, but
Yeah, I was gonna say
appreciate
I don't
your
even know
question.
what the, like that how one would even implement that.
Do you have any insight, Wayne? I know you've worked on a lot of different projects.
Are the assets exposed for Game Maker stuff?
I couldn't quite tell you. I know when I compile it for like a platform other than Steam, you can't really go in there and mess with stuff. I think they might be with Steam. You might be able to just go in that folder and mess with stuff. I'm not exactly sure though. I haven't
Yeah, because
tried.
if the assets are exposed, then you can essentially just go in and change
Yeah,
anything to your heart's content.
that might be possible. I'm gonna say give it a try and
Yeah,
let us
knock
know
yourself
if
out.
if it works if you can.
It might be a closed system on Steam too. I think if it was, I mean, not completely. Obviously, there's people use mods on Steam games all the time, but I wonder if it's like a more accessible avenue with GOG because you get the exe like a package that's not DRM. So I wonder if there's something to that as well with that platform. But anyway.
I guess in that way, like if you wanted to do full support, that's like a much larger project just because you have to figure out UI and how people are getting things in and out of the game and stuff like that. We did a ton of that with Isaac, and they're still supporting all of that, and
Yeah,
it's a lot of work.
yeah. There's definitely nothing built in. We can say that.
Yeah, I want someone to replace the ship with RushJet from.
Oh.
Pretty sweet.
Oh, since I'm on Twitter, I was just reminded I saw East Asia Soft put out a request saying, "Any devs, do you want to participate in this like lewd event with us?" And they had like these big-breasted anime video game characters on it. And there's people reaching out, and someone replied, "Let's get Colin and Chris in there from Twin Breaker."
Hell yeah.
What do you guys think? What do you think about that?
Let's do it. I don't whatever it takes. Like whatever it takes. It's fine with me. It's funny. East Asia Soft seems to be leaning more into the lewd stuff. I've noticed, which I think is pretty wise. Actually, I'm surprised that not on Sony's platforms, maybe because they're kind of being prude with a lot of stuff. But it's probably a good place to be.
If it works for them.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got Monsta Pontes 93 says, "I'm very much looking forward to this on PlayStation when it comes. I look forward to the new trophies and whatever you guys plan to do with this. I am hopeful for collectors or re-release physical copies. Uh, I will be first to sign up. I really want the physical for this game. My goal is to get it on PS4, PS Vita, and PS5. That would be awesome. We'll see. We're considering it. We're considering a PS5 release, so
Yeah,
stay tuned.
I think we'll do it. I just don't think it's going to be anytime until Q2 or something next year. I don't know, because I fund this stuff myself. Like I literally have to pay East Asia Soft to use their licenses at a factory in Hong Kong to publish X amount of games. Then they send them to us. Then we have to get it ESRB rated. Then you have to send the goddamn games to the ESRB. You have to deal like all. It's just a whole mess of things that need to be done. But we also could have gotten the other games out earlier. But to the point Lachlan was making, it's like we wanted to make sure that when we sold them, we had everything and it was ready to go, so we could just pop them right in the mail. So I think it'll happen. It's going to take time.
Yeah, you got to do that that other batch of Super Perils first too, as well.
Yeah, we're going to do that on
make
Black
space.
Friday. We're going to do that Black Friday. So, and we're going to announce more details on Sacred Symbols about that. But I had no idea that there was so much interest. You and I were talking, and we were actually, and I told my audience that we were holding some of the copies back in the hopes that maybe we would do like an anthology one day where we would have like a couple hundred copies of every game we've done, and we could just bundle them in some special way and sell them. And then I was like, well, 500 copies sold in 10 minutes. So I guess we got to sell the other 500 copies, which is crazy, you know. And shout out to Micah because she shipped all that stuff herself. So
Yeah, big shout out. Shipping them out about 1,000 times faster than limited run games.
yeah, dude, I get it. I don't want to deal with limited run games anymore after what they did to Carolyn. But as of a couple months ago, I still got something in the mail. I'm like, when did I order this? Like,
Right, you order it and then it's like 2 years later. Oh, we made it now. I was like, it wasn't made when I ordered it.
yeah, I was like, I ordered this like 17 months ago or something like that. I have no. Anyway.
Yeah, because isn't it?
It's like Christmas.
Yeah, yeah, but like surprise stalkery kind of Christmas, like this past forgotten self that's done it. That you're like,
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
It does beg the question then, I guess, with that, not to sort of derail it, but they must be doing like using pre-order cash to actually fund the
It's gotta be. I mean, once you get in that hole, you can't really stop doing that, right? That's why
That's
it's. I mean,
risky.
I'm just speculating here. I don't want to
yeah
say.
yeah
Also, I think that's probably right. And I think they're probably healthy. They're just always many projects behind, you know? And the thing that makes me more nervous than anything is, do you guys know who owns them?
Isn't it Embracer?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Embracer.
Yeah.
And they haven't been doing so good lately.
Interesting
That's gonna be
stories
like-
coming out.
Yeah.
That's gonna be the rug pull of this generation if that does go. What a house of cards, hey. Oh.
It all seemed to make sense for them. Like, I could see it all. Not they have way too many studios. They were all going to compete with each other. But the idea that they were going to have their own bespoke, like, manufacturer that could work on their games specifically is kind of smart. But they're just like so many moves ahead of themselves right now that they can't. It's not going to play out like that. Though. I'm sure limited run will live on, probably spin back off or something at some point.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got Finley Ghost here, and he says, "Hey Lillymo, I'm looking to get into game dev as well. As I've scoured YouTube for the best game dev videos, I found that many successful indie game dev companies put out monthly, quarterly game dev logs on YouTube. Is there any possibility of that happening in the future for Lillymo?" Well, we're kind of testing the water here. Wayne and I recorded a discussion a while back when we updated Habroxia 2. So this is our second discussion we posted on this channel. I think we will do more. I think it makes sense to do one with the JRPG as we, because that's a game where we're going to have it playable but not ready for release yet for a while. So I think that's the kind of environment where it would make sense to have a team discussion and like properly introduce the project and discuss things. But we'll see.
Yeah, I'm interested
Thanks
to
for your
see
feedback.
what people think of the subject matter specifically. I'm like, I'm not on tenterhooks about it at all. It is what it is, but it's definitely different, and I want to see what people think of it. So yeah, that'll be fun to get.
You mean like the setting of the JRPG?
Yeah, just the I don't even know how to describe it without spoiling it. Like just the subject matter, like just what it's about,
Right.
what it's specifically saying. I think will be a little bit different than many games, and I think it's going to rub some people the wrong way, to be honest. But I want.
I think it's gonna. Well, maybe. I don't think it will really have any type of like maybe it'll rub some people the wrong way, but I don't think it'll be anything where people are like coming after us about it.
No,
or
no,
anything
no. I
like
don't think so either. It'll have just the right amount of annoyance about it, because I even found it interesting with Jono, who's really wrote the game based on my premise and my characters and all these things, and really took it to the next level. You know, he found it a little challenging at times himself. You know, which I thought was really, really interesting. That's about the whole baton passing, though. About
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I don't want like you said, I don't want to spoil anything, but I think that element of it is it's fascinating, and it's like I think it's a good way of doing things. Having him be involved, I think makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways.
Totally, yeah. People have more clarity, and I think I'm proud of it. Like when I look at it and when I look at videos of it and the design and whatever, I'm like, this is dope. It's the whole. I think Kamiya was talking a little bit about it, and a few others, about whether you should embrace the idea of Japanese or Japanese style games and what that means. And we mean this with all due homage. Like what we're trying to do is represent the Final Fantasy IVs and the Secret of Evermores and those kind. And I'm like, yeah, I see that spirit developing, but with a bit of a different twist, which I think will be pretty cool. Although I've learned some things from playing Sea of Stars too, and I play so many JRPGs, but where it's coming through here, where I'm like, we have to have a some sort of certain eye towards modernity that I didn't think we were going to have, specifically a quest log probably and like a journal to like let you know what you're doing next or whatever. I didn't want
Yeah,
them.
I heard your feedback on that, and
Yeah, I didn't want that. I didn't want that in our game, but I'm like, yeah, I think we're going to need that, maybe we'll see what happens. But yeah, I imagine we'll announce that probably early next year. Maybe, I don't know. I'd like to get it out next year. We'll see what happens.
Okay, and then Max says, "I'm so excited to hear about your upcoming RPG, hopefully in 2024." So there you go. We've covered that for you, Max. Will there be any harder mode and new levels? And this is, of course, talking about Habroxia 1. And new levels, no, but there is a new difficulty, which if you've played Habroxia 2, there was the New Game Plus and the New Game Plus Plus. With Habroxia 1, we just called it hard difficulty, but it unlocks after you beat the game the first time. And it's going to be more challenging than if you went from normal difficulty to New Game Plus on Habroxia 2. It's kind of like going from normal mode to New Game Plus 1.5, and by the end, it's New Game Plus 2. I'm trying to describe the balancing here, but it's going to be a much more challenging experience. Habroxia 1, in a lot of ways, I've rebalanced all of the enemies, all of the bosses have been reprogrammed. You start with less HP than you used to. You have a lower max HP than you used to. The ship upgrades have all been redone in the upgrade shop. So yeah, lots of changes for this updated version of Habroxia 1. I'll just go through some of those here because we were going to do those on a video. I'll just run some of these off. You can remap controls now. There's a accessibility option where you can enable auto fire, so it'll just keep shooting without you any input. There's controller detection for Steam. You can switch between PS4 controller, PS5 controller, Xbox, Switch Pro, keyboard and mouse, Steam Deck support. You can play it in 16:10 resolution. I've changed the way combos work now. If an enemy flies by, it no longer kills your combo. You only lose your combo if you take damage. Okay, we added the story intro, we added the story ending, we added the level map screen, fixed lots of enemy spawning issues, online leaderboards for every level, redid all the side modes, added the boss rush mode. Rockets now cause splash damage and destroy invincible rocks that otherwise couldn't be broken. New astronauts for hard mode. Some funny stuff with shields I won't get into. It's pretty intricate. The attract mode we already talked about. You can change the songs. Whole new trophy list that's much harder. And that's there's someone else that asked about the trophy list. I'll just say, yes, it's much harder than it was before. It's not as hard as Habroxia 2 on PS5 is, I wouldn't say, but it's closer to that than the old trophy list. We don't want to do super easy trophy lists anymore. So if you're looking for that, don't play it on Steam or PS5, I guess.
Yeah, I wonder if are we going to release any of the are we going to release updates on the Xbox version?
Yes, but no new achievements.
Yeah, I was going to say, because didn't we learn that from
people review bombed us and
Yeah.
sent us hate mail and all sorts of crazy stuff for adding new achievements to Habroxia 2 that were hard on that game. So not doing that.
What we learned, because we're both trophy people, what we learned is that they go for 100% ratings on games, and there's no platinum trophy indicator there. So when you release new content, we're like, we're releasing new free content, and they're like, yeah, but now it says that I have 79% of the achievements or whatever, and they like,
yeah, you stole my 100%.
Oh, they were so mad. Oh my goodness.
Mr. Steal your 100%, they call me. Okay. Okay, this is a question for everyone here. Talking purely control-wise, so not thinking about gameplay or overall quality, what do you think about the controls of Habroxia 1 versus Habroxia 2? Do you prefer the twin stick, or do you like the straightforward shooting with the different buttons?
I like the twin stick personally better, but I think both the other way feels more old. If we're trying to be fundamentally old, then that is the kind of the way we should be doing it, is with D-pad control and face buttons, or if you want to use triggers, I guess. But I'm just such a housemark sucker, and like just all those kinds of games where it's like, come on, man, that's the way, really, in my opinion, that you'd want to play a game like this. And I imagine that most people would agree, but having the option is cool too.
For me, like I like that separation between the two. Like that was one of the things when we started doing Habroxia 2, is we really started to like play with that and see what we could do with that, and I don't know, create a different feeling in that way.
I think it also sort of makes sense story-wise too that Sabrina, the next generation, would have like a ship upgrade or something unique to her. So I like that aspect of it too. I have to say I think Habroxia and Habroxia 2 are my favorite Lillymo games to play. Like they're the ones that really I was like, yeah, this is. But I was like looking on my GOG library and I was like trying to remember there was a game I played on PC many moons ago, like way back when. It was like Raptor called, I think.
Yeah, Raptor Call of the Shadows.
Yeah,
He's
and
actually
that's.
remaking that.
Oh whoa, really?
The original dev for that. I think it's like, I don't know, somewhere in the middle of the project right now.
That's sick.
But
Okay, that's something to look forward to.
This is
But,
one of the reasons I
yeah.
love Wayne so much. He just knows like every game. He's like, "Oh, I've got the info for you."
1994
Waynopedia. Yeah.
MS-DOS
Very
release
good.
from Cygnus Studios.
Yeah, but
I had the original one on like 12 floppy disks or something until I lost one of the disks and I couldn't play
Oh,
it
no.
anymore.
Yeah, I loved that game as a kid. Like that was just so. I think I was bad as a kid. I just did cheats because I just wanted to have the laser cannon the whole time and just like mush all the enemies. But it was that was it tickled that part of my lizard brain when I first played Habroxia. So I was like, oh, this is that feel. And I think just having the upgrade systems as well was a nice little touch to sort of like get you on the hook to keep going. And try and progress more than just the skill based aspect of the bullet hell dodging and what have you. But yeah, no, I think I prefer Habroxia 2, yeah, control wise. Um, but I like them both. I think yeah, they're both equally as good in my mind. It's just that 2 felt like that little notch more.
Mm.
Um, and
And
definitely modernizes it too. Like I like that it's not, and not in a way that's like egregious either. I think it's a very clever idea to do the twin stick. Like it's never. I don't think that I don't know if there is another shoot 'em up out there that does have that control scheme that does the twin stick. I'm probably way off base with that, but yeah, I don't know. You
was,
might be able to
There's
help us, Wayne.
there's at least Remote Life that came out a few years ago.
Okay.
I want to say they're European, German, maybe. Not entirely certain. Really interesting visuals, though. Cool game.
Okay. Cool.
I was gonna say that I think the beautiful thing that is built into the game and that Barry built into it that I love as far as just playing it too is and this is what I try to describe to people. Like my sister Allie she has Habroxia 2 I think on Switch and she's like, I can't get past the first stage, and I'm like, I just don't understand what you don't understand. Like, not about playing the game but just making your ship stronger, that the game has really a built-in difficulty modifier that helps you in the moment, that the game it's not linear or on rails in some way where it's just going and going and going. Like you can go back and re-explore and grind and do all that, and I think that that's a fundamentally important part of what makes Habroxia tick as well, and what makes it accessible to people, and why things like trophies and the meta challenges and stuff will make it cool in terms of doing it without making your ship so strong or whatever. But you can make, that's why I tell people, I'm like, Habroxia 2, it's almost crazy that you couldn't beat it at all. Like you can make your ship insane if you just took the time like where you wouldn't take any damage and you're killing everything in one hit. I love that about it.
That kind of feeling like a role playing game where
Right.
if you're not strong enough, you just grind a little bit more, and you're like, oh, now I can beat this boss.
Right, and that's like what's frustrating. I always bring up Tactics Ogre Reborn that came out last year. I was really excited about it, and it's a great game. It was awesome on PSP, and they put a level like cap in it where you just can't do that. And I'm like, what are you doing? You're ruining the essence of the game. And the same thing, it's one of my major problems with Sea of Stars. Although I think it's awesome, I highly recommend it. It's just that it's too curated. Like there's not enough ways to make yourself stronger or to do things. You're just kind of on this. It's the same thing I always felt about like the old Lunar, like Silver Star Story and Eternal Blue, those role playing games where they introduced a concept which I know well now, but I didn't at the time, which was level scaling, where you can't really get more powerful or everything else gets more powerful. It's the same idea behind the easiest way to play Final Fantasy VIII is to fight as little as possible. Like when you can break games fundamentally like that, it's just and that you can play it in a spectrum, I think is much cooler. And I give you a lot of credit for that, Barry. That's what I always tell people in that game is like, just play with the upgrades.
Well, thank you, and I agree completely on your takes about level scaling. And I'm a big grinder. I love to grind some RPGs. That's how I learned to play them. Before I knew any better to pick up on the strategies, I just go out and fight the same two doofuses again and again to get a higher level. So I've always loved grinding. With that said, I can see in my video there it's gotten dark here. We've been going much longer than we had planned. So before we go, I just want to say, any of you guys have any questions for me before we end it?
I do. How do you feel? I mean, you're you see it was brought up earlier, but you're just so engaged all the time. Like when I email you or whatever, you email me back. So you are the most fastidious emailer back I've ever known on a consistent basis, which I really appreciate. Like I know that if I was in trouble, it was like the beginning of midsummer, and I was sending you an email about how I was in trouble, you would see it quick enough to stop me from killing myself.
Yeah.
But but in all seriousness, I think I'm curious how you feel. Are you excited to get the game out? Are you excited to like the? I think things like this are important in the sense that I don't know why, but it's kind of a mystery how games are made for people still. You can go find very deep GDC talks and very technical conversations, but there's like so much to making games that I'm surprised that it's not its own sub entity within our like an almost an observational series of podcasts and media functions, very inside the actor studio style thing. And so I think it's a good time to kind of expose how you feel right now, because I think a lot of people are curious what the grind is of an indie developer.
Yeah, it's for me. It's a nonstop, every single day. Most of the day, I'm working, and if I'm not, I'm thinking about why I'm not working. I'm like, why am I not doing that right now? I got to get to work. What was I going to say? I'm about to feel relieved. I'm on the verge of relief, is what I'd say. Um, with these projects that we've done, we remade Super Perils. We've touched up Habroxia 1 now. Habroxia 2, we did updates for. I really feel like they weren't 100% necessary, but I think they were all worth doing. And I think now that we've done those, we no longer have to revisit any of our past games. Like if we want to release Twin Breaker on PS5, I feel like we just do that with a new trophy list,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't put any work into changing it really.
Yeah, we should port it. We should bring it over at some point, and maybe do that in Prelude when we know what we're going to do with the next, if we're going to continue it or do something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So for me, I've had that kind of weighing over me a little bit, where we wanted to get all of our games out on all of the platforms. We wanted to get them all just right. And I feel like we've basically done that. And now I can focus on completely on rather, because I am focusing on many other projects, but I can focus on our upcoming stuff. And what I'm going to do, this is a ritual I've developed, I was telling Wayne about, is every time we release a game, and I have this feeling when we do, like the day it comes out, I'm just like, oh, I got to be like checking what people are saying. Is there something I need to fix? I got to be looking, and I can't relax even when it's out. So what I do now is I take a puzzle, and there's these 3D puzzles of like buildings and stuff like that. So I've got a Downton Abbey and a Harry Potter 3D puzzle ready. And I'm not sure which one yet, but as soon as the game's out, I'm just going to take like half the day and build myself a puzzle and watch some Harry Potter or Downton Abbey or something, and not think about making games for half a day. And then it'll be like this whole slice of that work, this slice of my life is past, and now we're on to the next thing, and I can get it out of my head. Because otherwise I'll just be thinking about that one thing we didn't do right in the Habroxia 1 update, and I should go back and I should patch it again on every platform and get in that cycle again. So anyway, that was a lot to.
No, it's good. I mean, it's good to hear from you and know that. And I think it's time to walk away now for sure. It was, as was said earlier, like the time that you have to dedicate it is as much time as it exists. So it's never going to be quite the way you want it to be, or you will always change it. I always feel that way. You just got to move on. And we will.
Okay, well, I think that's a good point to wrap it. Thanks to you guys for being here with me. Thanks for everyone who watched this. If you want to check out Habroxia, it's available on every platform. We're going to be updating it on those platforms with this new content that we're putting out on Steam, and we'll be doing so soon on PS5. So look forward to that. And do you guys want to say where they can find you on like X, I guess, not Twitter anymore? You want to go? You want to go ahead, Wayne?
Sure. I'm at Wanyo Dose on the Twitter, X, whatever, pretty much every platform. You can find me.
Yeah, same for me. Just I'm very inactive, so there is that to say. But yeah, just at Lachlan Piney on Instagram or the social media network formerly known as Twitter. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah.
call it. It's like the football team, the Washington Redskins. It took me probably 5
Yeah.
years to stop calling them that, and so I'm gonna need about a 5-year grace period to stop calling it Twitter. I'm inactive too, but I'm a Long Island Viper on there. I also wanted to say that if you own Habroxia on PS4 or Vita, it's free on PS5, right? So that's an important
Yep.
thing to note. So if you already
Cross-buy.
supported us there, then just go play it for free and enjoy. Let us know what you think.
Sorry, real quick. I did actually have a question.
Go for it.
Would you ever consider doing limited merchandise runs for the games, like doing like logos from Habroxia or Twin Breaker or Super Perils on shirts or posters or anything like that? I'm asking because I would like some of those, but I don't know. If
I'd be
that's,
completely open to it. I mean, I don't really like. I love our physical editions because I love having collectibles and stuff like that. I remember Henry was Henry's our art. By the way, Henry, our artist on the JRPG, now lives in Japan. I don't know if you knew that, Colin. but
Yeah,
we-
I did know that. It's wow. I know it was like a dream come true for him. He and I emailed back and forth a little bit about that.
So now we're actually making a JRPG.
Yeah,
but
now we sent him over there specifically so that people don't call us racist or
we
something.
tick
like
the
that.
box. But he was discussing. He was showing me some Breath of Fire 2 statue. Breath of Fire 2 statue, and he was showing me some ships. And he's like, "Oh, what if we had a Habroxia figure or something like that?" I'd love any of it, you know. So I'm definitely not going to stand in the way of anything like that from happening. I don't know if we need a bigger audience before we do something like that, but I'm definitely open to it.
Yeah, we could do like I could definitely fund because we do our own merch shop for Last Stand now out of my house. Actually, we got our just a whole garage redone so that we can accommodate it because it was starting to take my house over. And I'm obsessed with cutting the middleman now because I've realized how much money we were not making and how much more we can control the customer experience, which I think is really, really important. Like one of the frustrating things about using East Asia Soft, it had nothing to do with them. It was just that they were in Asia, which was like you would just lose track of shipping. Like things would just ship, and there was like no way to track it. Or you might want to. Another example is I would tell people too. We would only make like $5 or $6 for every one of those games that we sold, so we would basically be making more if you bought it digitally, which was So it's like just. So I'm really into doing these more bespoke, like one-off boutique-ish style things, and I think we can make that happen with Lillymo stuff too. We just have to figure out exactly what we want to do and how it'll look. I think if the role-playing game finds its little niche, I think that some of the characters from that would be really interestingly, marketable too for a niche audience as well. So I think there's potential for that. We would have to talk about that. I'd be very happy to fund that and sell that stuff though, for sure.
All right. Well, with that, let's call it a close. And thank you again for being here with me. And thank you everyone for watching.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. All right, I'm going to
Okay.
stop it here.